All right, we're back, and it's COMP397. It's week 3, lesson 3, part 3, 333, right? And last time we talked about this CSS we were going to do, right? I'm just going to kind of zone out of here again. Oops, there we go. Again, what we want to try and do is when we style our pages, first we style our pages, and then we want to do is what we're doing is we're creating a 1-second transition between pages. That's what we're doing. Okay, that's what that last piece was. This is our next piece. Okay, so our next piece is we need to have this div tag in here called impress. We need to have this. This is our container tag that's going to create our area for our slides. So impress. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to go back into Visual Studio. I'm going to go back into index.html, and I'm going to make some space down here. And then inside here, I'm going to create a div tag. And here's my shorthand: div pound, right? Impress tab, right? Because we're using Zen coding. Zen coding is part of Visual Studio 2013, Visual Studio Web Essentials, right, for update 4, right? Remember, I'm asking you to get this. It includes all that stuff, right? So div ID impress. That's the first thing you have to put in. Okay, next. This next piece. I'm using a class, step, two classes, step and slide. All right, so with a, the ID of the slide is ID 1. All right, ID 1. That's the next div. ID 1, class, step, and slide. Okay, there we go. So div with an ID of 1, right, with a class of step and a class of slide. Follow my coding here. Take a look. It looks weird, but if I click tab, I get it out, right? That saves me trouble, right? I'm lazy. I want to be as lazy as I can and effective. Right? Are you lazy and effective like me? Right? If you are, this is the way to do it, using Zen coding. All right, next. I need a div with a class of slide dash text. Slide dash text. So div, right, with a class dot of slide dash text. Enter or tab. Okay, there we go. This is my structure so far. Okay, what's my text? I have a couple of paragraph tags. There's a time machine over there, flip the switch, right? And a couple of A tags in here. Let's try this out in Zen coding. So P, right? And if you want to put in the code for your P tag, so actually like your text, you put it in curly braces, right? There is a time machine over there, comma, flip the switch, right? And then I'm going to go beyond my curly braces and click tab, right? And then I get that inside my 2 P tags, right? That's a really bad example because you might as well just put the P tags in there and typed it as well. But I'm showing you how to put text with Zen coding. Okay, next line. So flip the switch. All right, I got a couple things here. I've got a P tag with a link, right, with an A tag. And then inside the A tag, the href value is number 2, right? Flip it, right? Number is, of course, the second ID, ID 2. And then it is outside of the tag, right, the A tag. So flip would be the one that's highlighted as a link. And the P tag, right, with number 3. So number, of course, looks like it's a hashtag 3. This hashtag is actually to the next ID. Wait, and this is in caps, for your dad who is a scientist to come home. So there's 2 things, flip it or wait. All right, so how do I write this tag really simply? So P greater than sign. A, right, in square brackets. Square brackets is the, I want to choose a property to change. My href tag is equal to, right, the second tag, right?
Are you doing your Zen coding?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. No, okay, I'm not going to do it.
And if I press tab, I get this. Come on. What do you mean you're not going to do it? What do you mean? What do you mean? Right? So if you notice, right, between the href tags and the A, I got to put flip, right? It. right? Flip it, and the same thing goes my p tag. P tag with with an A tag inside of it, right? I'm going to put square brackets if I want to hit a specific attribute. href is equal to number 3, sorry, right? And if I want to put in, just to go take one step forward, right? If I want to add in the flip inside there, then I could use my curly braces to go wait, right? Wait, and then I can press tab. Zen coding. Okay, it's shorthand. I know Ali's shaking his head. Wait for your dad, who is a scientist, to come home. Okay, that's our first slide, if you will, the slide text and a couple of options, right? Slide text and a couple of options. Okay, we haven't really, I haven't really, for my slide text itself, I'm targeting it, but I'm targeting it with Impress. This ID here is the ID of my slide. Each slide, we're going to make a single page application, right? It looks like it's multiple pages, but actually it's only one page, right? We're using CSS and Impress.js to fool the user to thinking that it's more than one page, but actually it's only one page. If I press stop here and stop debugging and run for the first time again, let's take a look what I get. This is what you should get too, if you've done everything like I have. All right, there's a time machine over there. Flip it. Huh? You got it?
Mine is like.
It's mashed. Did you mash it up? You mashed it, eh? You mashed it up. Let's take a look at, like you killed it. Let's go to more tools, JavaScript Console, see what I've got here. This is important. If you notice here, my game is running, but now I don't have any errors because I'm actually using my Impress framework the way I should, right? So now I've got my first slide. Oh, hey, take a look at that. My slide is actually also responsive. If I kind of change the size of my page, my slide changes size as well. Look, take a look. Woohoo! Right? It's already responsive by default. This is good. Right? Do you have what I have?
I have, but I don't have it in another screen.
Just because we've made a couple changes here, I'm going to go to stop. I'm going to go to pull up Solution Explorer here. I'm going to go to Team Explorer, and I've made some changes. I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Changes. I'm going to say created first slide and updated frame, I'll say, yeah, base project. That's what I did. Commit. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to go unsync commits, and I'm going to click sync. All right, cool. Well, that means if I go over here to my GitHub, which is, where is my GitHub? GitHub. Here's my GitHub. And if I go to me, and if I search for your repository that is made, which is right here, and if I look at it, right, it shows me these 3 commits now. Take a look. I've got my initial commit that was added by GitHub. I got my setup basic framework for Impress.js. I've got my created first slide and updated base project. So each of these pieces are different snapshots of different times when I've done my commits. All right? You guys should have this too. And now if you guys are tracking me, you can guys go up on GitHub, and if you wanted to look at my pages, if you wanted to look at my index.html page, because you missed something, you can always go up here and just copy what I got here. Worst case scenario, if you're lazier than I am, right? For the true lazy person, go in here, just copy what I just did, and it'll work for you, right? All right. All right, if I click on these things, nothing's going to happen, right? Because there is no ID2 and ID3. There's no ID2 and ID3. So that's why nothing's happening here. Okay. So I've done this piece. All right. Well, here's ID2. So now I'm actually putting in the other 2 slides. So I'm getting a second slide, and I want to do a third slide. So my second slide, take a look at this value here. Data-x is equal to 1500. We'll talk about this in a second. And our ID is equal to 2, right? So I'm going to say this. Div ID is equal to 2, class step slide, data x is equal to 1500. That's the first piece I need to do. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back into Visual Studio. I'm going to unclip this so we can see more of what I'm doing. I'll make it bigger for you guys to see it, which is going to kind of go over to the next side. Inside, so this is the slide text that's inside my first slide. This is my first slide right here. If I want to really document properly, I probably want to put something like this, right? First slide, right? This, like the dragon, would be your initial cave, or whatever you want to call it, right? And then I want to put my second slide. So here's my second slide, right? So basically, I'm making it look like there's more than one slide on my page, but it's really a single page application that I'm making, right? Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing, right? I'm going to go div, remember how we did this? Pound 2, which is the ID 2. This is my Zen coding, or Emmet if you use other systems, right? I still need to do a class of step and a class of slide, right? Those two things I need to do. And I also want to make a special attribute or microdata. I want to use microdata. And my microdata has got to be this, data-x is equal to 1500. So I'm going to put that in here. Data-x is equal to 1500, right? And then when I press tab, I get all that information, right? Done. Perfectly right. Right? Step slide, data-x. Data-x 1500 means, and we're going to see what that means. Is it to the right, 1500? Or is it to the left, 1500? Which way am I going to slide? I'm going to slide from the right, right? Because I'm getting that slide from the right. Because x we count from the top left corner of our screen. We talked about that last time. As we move toward the right, we go towards this 1500 pixels to the right. So we're getting our next slide. That's where it's going to sit, right? All right. So we're actually positioning it in a different place. Okay, cool. So we still need this div class slide text. And look, I even put my slide text. I made that incorrect. We're going to go back here and restyle it. Div, right? Sorry, I'll do this the Zen coding way. Div with a class of slide-text, right, there it is. And in my slide text, it says, here's the next piece, you went back in time, it was fun, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to put in our p tag. So I'll p tag, oops, you went back in time, it was fun, right? Underneath that, I also have another little message. I have a div with a class of menu, right, and an a tag that takes me back to with a link that takes me back to the first slide, and it's going to be called start over. So class menu a tag number 1 start over. Let's try this out. You can do this with Zen coding. I'm doing it underneath the p tag. Right, so div tag, right, with a class of menu, right, that's got an embedded a tag with an href, right, of 1, right, and our text is going to be start over, and I'm going to tab. See how perfect that is? Nice, huh? Let's make sure we got this right. Menu, href1, start over. Huh? It's perfect. So this is our second slide we've done, right? And we're going to save this thing, and I'm going to run this one. See what this one looks like. All right, so if you notice, I don't see my second slide here. If I click flip it, right, bam, it brings me back this slide. If I click start over, bam, it brings me back this slide to the first one. This is where I started. See how I kind of transitioned there? That was kind of ugly, right? It's like bang, and it transitioned over, right? Well, it's because some of our CSS isn't completed yet. We're going to complete the CSS when we do our stepping and all that kind of stuff. Are you guys good so far? All right. You see how we're going, right? This is how you're going to create your own story, right? All right. Let's do another slide. I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to go back and do our third slide. So again, it's this div tag, this div tag, this outer tag. Sometimes, you know, when I have too many div tags, I get lost. So it's a good thing to kind of put in. Sometimes this is end of impress. I put this in there so I know that this div tag is my outer container, right? And this is, right, the end of slide 1, or sorry, slide 2, right? So I don't get mixed up with my which div tags belong to what. This is the end of slide 1. Make sense? And this is the end of, this is my slide text, right? Oops. End of slide text. And that can be the same, because that way I know which one is which, so I don't get confused, right? Because sometimes what happens is you make so many div tags and you don't know which one is which. Now this is great. I keep on repeating myself. I keep typing everything just to be, you know, faster. I'm just going to copy all this stuff this time and just modify it because it's easier to change, right, and delete than it is to type by yourself. So this is, so far I've got the second slide in here. I'm going to make this the third slide now. I've just copied and pasted, right? I'm going to also change my ID. I've got to be careful. I've got to change my ID to 3. And you know what? I want to make this go from negative 1500, which means from the left, negative 1500. Okay, I still want to go to start over. This is still good, but I know that my text is a little different. It says, slide text says, you hung out for a while and then your dad came home. Then he helped you with your homework. It was kind of fun, but not that much fun because you didn't time travel, basically, right? I like different text, so let's just change this. You waited for your dad, as an example. You waited for your dad. And then maybe, again, I want to add another paragraph tag. You know, he wanted you to do your homework. And then here's my p tag. It was really boring. Right? Start over. You can do whatever message you want, right? And by the way, I'm just gonna align my p tags so they're a little bit different, just so that they align with my text. Okay, there we go. Let's see how that slide looks. So now I've got slide 3, end of slide 3. I've got to make sure my comments are changed as well, so they all look nice, right? I've got my third slide. I'm going to run debug my options here, my thing. Here we go. Flip it. First of all, I refresh too. Or maybe I should refresh, eh? I flip the switch. I go back to this. Hey, you went back in time. It was fun. Start over. And then you know what? I want to wait for your dad. What happens if I wait for my dad? Well, it comes from the left now. It says you waited for your dad. You know, wanted you to do your homework. It was really boring. Start over, right? So again, is this an exciting demo? No, it's not an exciting demo, but it gets you to understand. Did you make it work?
My game is finished.
You're done? You finished your game? All right. The idea here is this is how you would scaffold out your story for assignment 1. I'm giving you all the piece parts that you need, and you also have the example from the Dragon up on GitHub, right? All right, let's go. Keep going. So things to note for this one: your data-x microdata, or your attribute, if you will. Whenever you see data in when you do HTML5 or anything like that, and it's inside of your tag, it's targeting JavaScript, right? JavaScript is looking for that data tag. It's a custom tag that says, like for example, you might see in some frameworks data-role, right? Because you're marking up your HTML. It's accessing your hot, eh? You're hot. It's crazy hot. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. And that's what this is doing. That's what data dash is telling me to do. It's to access JavaScript. I want to look at the X coordinate and do that. Okay, let's do some more styling because I want to try and do this so we style our page a little bit more. It's important because if we don't do our styling, then our page will never look right. So we're going to do another piece of styling, slide P. So slide is the class. Every paragraph with a class of slide, we're going to say margin dash top 15 pixels, margin bottom 30 pixels, and a line height of 45. All right, so slide P. Let's go back and do some more styling. I'm just going to kill all this for now. Here's in my main CSS, right? So whenever we do that, we're going to put it down here. We're going to say slide, right? So we're targeting our class P, every paragraph tag that's inside of our class of slide. That's what we're targeting, right? And again, we're doing our margin top and our margin bottom of 15 and 30. There's different ways to do this, of course. Margin top, 15 pixels. Margin bottom, right, 30 pixels, right? And if you notice, our line height is 45 pixels. Line dash height And Visual Studio is going to help you, 45 pixels. That's our first piece. So slide P, right? We're setting up our margins for our slide, a little bit more styling, right? And this says, here it is. Look, here's some comments I put in here for your CSS. Styling for slide paragraphs. Let's put that in there. This is how you put your comments in for your CSS. So styling for slide paragraphs. And if you notice styling, I've spelled wrong, and Visual Studio comes in, helps me correct it, even in the comments. Right? Are you with me? All right, styling for slide links. So we're going to have a slide class with all A tags in the slide class, and all A tags that are visited in the slide class are going to have a specific color. So let's do slide class, A tags and A tags that are visited. All right, so let's do that. So the slide class, all A tags in the slide class, and all A tags in the slide class with a pseudo class of visited, right? This is very important. So those are the two things we're targeting now. So when a visited link, and we're going to put in a color that looks like it's kind of blackish, 071549. Let's do that. That's another way of doing color. So 071549, right? Kind of a blackish color, just like the show. Text decoration, none. So what we're doing is we're removing, when we do text decoration, we remove the underline. We don't want any underline for our links, right? That's what's happening there. Okay, cool. Our background color is going to be ABC. I like this one. Background color. ABC, right? Now we can do, remember, we're hitting color in different ways. We did RGB, RGBA. We did the hexadecimal values, full hexadecimal values, as well as this method. What is this really a shorthand for? Who remembers? It's AABBCC. That's what the shorthand is, right? It's a shorthand. If it's the same, then we can just write it like this, ABC, right? Okay, for those guys, no one knows. You guys can't remember. Padding 5, borders radius 5, and border 1 pixel solid with CDE. Oh, I like that. Nice and easy. So padding 5 pixels, border radius 5 pixels, border 1 pixel. Is it solid? 1 pixel solid CDE. CDE. Yeah. Okay. Are you with me? All I'm doing is I'm styling my links so they look like buttons. That's what this is doing. As an option, you could put on your own button styles. Like for example, if you wanted to include, if you're really great with something like Foundation, or if you're really, really fantastic with something like Bootstrap, you can use Bootstrap styling here instead of this. It's totally possible, and it works nicely with Bootstrap. All right, slide hover. We're going to do this. Slide hover. So the slide class, all A tags with a pseudo class of hover, and all A tags with a pseudo class of active that are part of this, that are inside the slide class, have a background color of CDE. So hover and active. So let's do that. So again, when we write this down, we go slide all A tags with a pseudo class of hover, and all A tags that are in the slide class with a pseudo tags of active, right? Have a background color or color? I can't remember. Background color of CD. Background color, not backface visibility. Background color of CDE, right? Some more styling. So again, the great thing about Visual Studio here is it gives you all the code hinting you need, both on the CSS side, as long as you have Visual Studio Web Essentials for Update 4, right? Then you'll get what I get, right? You may not see what I have if you don't use Visual Studio for Web Essentials, right? That's bad. I've told you to get that, right? Here's the next piece. Our slide text is in our slide is 450 pixels. So actually defining the size of our slide text now. So two classes here, slide and slide-text, height of 450 pixels. So we're saying all classes of slide-text that belong to the slide, that are inside of a slide class, right? That's what we're saying here, right? Have a height of 450 pixels. Height of 450 pixels. When I say all, and that's the way it's written, right? Already you're going to see some changes to the way we do stuff. Okay, cool. Here's the last one. Whenever we see a div menu, and by the way, this was our styling for my slide text area, so let's put that in there. So single line of code, so styling for slide text area, right? The next one I think is styling for the menu, right? Here's styling for the menu. So a div with a class of menu, all divs with a class of menu, we're going to have a border top 2 pixel solid black. So let's try this again. Why am I making you do this, guys? Because then you guys get to know the framework really nicely, right? All divs with a class of menu, that's what we're targeting, right? Have a border top 2 pixel solid black. Border top 2 pixels solid black. So you're writing your CSS styles. Okay, what else? And a padding top of 25. Padding top of 25 pixels. And the last one, of course, is a text align center. So we're just going to align with the center. Text align, oops. Are you with me? The border top 2 pixel solid black is going to produce a line, right, that separates your menu from your text. That's what it's going to do, right? So your text for your slide and the menu is going to be below it. By the way, guys, if you can't follow along, I'm too fast, or you don't like when I flip back and forth, you can always look on the videos, and you can always go up on GitHub and download stuff when I'm finished, right? Okay, let's take a look and see what I got now. So when I run this thing, I'm going to stop debugging for a second. I'm going to run this thing for the first time again, and let's see what I got now. Okay, a little different, right? So now you see I flip it, and I've got my wait for my dad who is signed us to come home, right? But see how these things are now, a little different than before? You don't have that?
No, I have it, but my first slide is really weird.
If I go to flip it, it goes to here, and if you notice, it says, you went back in time, it was fun, start over, right? Start over, I go back, and now I can go wait for my dad, and it comes from this side, and it goes, you wait for your dad. It was really boring, start over. And so you see my start over is the menu. I can put whatever other menu items I have here. Like, for example, try, flip the switch now, and I can take me back into that other section. You can actually do a crossover like that. But the idea here is pretty simple. The idea here is you have multiple slides, right? And there's just a play, because I like playing around sometimes, right? Right now we made it so that our this first slide here, or this slide that says you went back in time and blah blah, the x data-x is 1500. If I made data-y 1500, where does that exist for those people who are, good? Huh? Where? Below. Because why? Because remember, the top left corner of your screen is 0, 0, and when we go a positive y, we go down the page. So that should exist theoretically below us. Let's try this out and see if we're correct. I'm going to refresh. We're going to go to the second slide. It's going to be below us. I've just changed my data x to data y, and if I click flip it, then it comes in from the bottom, right? Very, very interesting. How about, here's something. What about if instead of data-y, this is kind of weird, what if I made data-z? Is that possible? Right? Huh? 3, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Where is it going to go, right? Data-z, right? I'm just playing around. We have to play around sometimes when we use the framework, right? Come on. Otherwise, we're going to have a boring class. We don't want that. So let's just start this up. No. Flip it. Bam. Right? Isn't that good? The idea here is that you can make it so that it appears from anywhere. You don't have to be limited, and this is sometimes what people run into. They make everything at minus 1500. What happens to that? Let's put both things at minus 1500, see what happens. I'd love to see this. We have to test this out so you know the effects, guys, or else you're going to have issues. So here's my data-x at 1500. And you know what? I'm going to do the same thing for data-x here. Instead of minus 1500, let's make this 1500 as well for my third slide. All right? Well, this is a problem, as you'll soon see. So here's what happens. So here's my initial slide. And then I click flip it, and oh man, right? Hold on a second. Start over, flip it. I start over. What happened? Getting both slides, right? So you don't ever want to position slides on top of each other, guys, or else you have some weird effect. Each slide has to have a unique location in your canvas, if you will, right? So any slide. So if you go to slide number, if you go down the line when you're moving down, don't leave it at 1500. Do it at 3500. Do it at 4500. Do it at Z minus 5, whatever, or Z plus 5, different levels. Because otherwise, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have your slides one on top of the other, and it's not going to work right. You're going to go, what the hell? How come it's doing this? Because they're at the same location. That's why. So please don't do that. All right, I'm just giving you a warning of what not to do. Let's put this back at 1500. Oh, not 11,500. Hey, that's another thing. What if it's really big? What if it's like 11,500? Can I do that? I made a mistake. I typed 11,000. Can it work like that too? Like really, really big space? Well, yeah, it kind of can, right? So here's 1500. I go back, right? Okay, now it's 11,000. There it is, right? And then let's go back.
If you put a really long number, I think it's going to take a while to get
It'll get there a while, but it'll take a while to get there, right? So be careful. It'll do 11,000 pixels across, right? But remember, the bigger you make it, you're going to position these slides in different pieces of different locations in memory, which would totally be fine for most users. Okay. Is everyone got this? You understand how to use this now? Are you good in the back? Now you're good? All right. So this is how we do this stuff. You're going to make your story, right? So your equivalent to the dragon. Please, no dragons. I don't want to see the dragon or any story about dragons coming back at me, right? I've had enough dragons to last a lifetime of stories, right? People have done this every single semester. I asked not to give me dragons, and they give me enough dragons that I feel like sick. I'm going to throw up dragons pretty soon, all right? So please, no dragons.
exceptionally drunk.
If you give dragons, I'll be very mad, all right? Very mad. All right. Let's just go back to the PowerPoint to make sure we covered everything. There's a couple other things we need to do. I'm just going to zoom back out. And by the way, again, I didn't have a chance to put this up, but I will. So I was helping people. You can create inventory. This is where it gets into inventory. I'm not going to go into that too much. If you wanted to create inventory, you could. You could certainly kind of create these blank inventory items where you're going to show your inventory. It tells you how to do that. And it also gives you some additional stylings for items, as well as player inventory boxes, so you can style your inventory a little bit better. Again, I'm not going to go into this piece because again, what you're doing is you can actually do a drag and drop, so you can drag and drop your inventory if you want. This is what this little recipe does for us. Again, I think it's an overkill for what we want. Okay, but that's what's inside the PowerPoint presentation. And just so everyone's clear, to have this presentation up online, I'm just going to go into it now as we're speaking, just before I forget, because people are going to complain, Tom, you didn't put your darn PowerPoint presentation up, and this is bad, right? So I'm going to put this, it's called Interactive Fiction, and it's going to be up in your course documents. I'm going to go to your Centennial. It always makes me log in, of course. And for you guys, as a reference card, I recommend you look at this. Again, when I look at the PowerPoint presentations, it's there as a reference card for you. So you can always go back in there and under Content, where it says Course Documents, right? I'm going to add this in. It'll be lesson 3. So I'm going to say Upload Files. And there were errors, but not anymore. Okay. I'm going to just skip this up a little bit because, well, maybe we can't do it. But it's there. Under lesson 3, you should see it. It's a big, long list of stuff right here. Right? And underneath that, there's lesson 3, the interactive fiction stuff. It's there too. So if you wanted to go in there, the PowerPoint presentation is there with all your stylings. Okay, let's go into this for a second. I'm going to just to finish off. I'm going to and again to demonstrate more and more of GitHub because you guys may have not seen too much of it. I'm going to go to stop debugging. Right. I'm going to pull up my Solution Explorer and pin it. Remember, this is how we do GitHub. I'm going to go to Team Explorer. If you've set things up correctly, if I go Home and Changes, I'll say Restyle. So all I did was really change main CSS. I also have a couple of untracked files here. Take a look. I don't want to leave these untracked files untracked. So I'm going to add them in. Right? So I'm going to say styled, added styles to main CSS, which is really what I did. Commit, home, and unsync commits, sync, and then all of a sudden you guys should have everything up on GitHub, so you can always check. I'm going to close Visual Studio for a second, and I'm going to go back to the Dragon files that I had up, right? Now I have them downloaded locally, which I recommend to you as well. And if I look and see what it looks like, here's the Dragon, right? Because this is your starting point. I want to kind of analyze this one because it's a little different than what I did here, right? Because I don't want you guys to be freaked out by it, right? So here's my Solution Explorer, and if you notice on the bottom, I have this old way of doing things. I've given you both ways now. I've given the new way with TypeScript, and this is the old way by doing it inline with a script file. I would accept both. I'm not going to force you to do TypeScript if you don't want to. I think TypeScript is the better way to do it if you're going to add an additional JavaScript into your file and do different funky things. Again, this is kind of the same thing with 1500 and 1500. And also, I would also ask you to look in here they have different styles in here you can use, especially from a transition perspective. It transitions differently than ours did. Okay. And if you see that, if I run this code, the one that you've got up on GitHub, if you notice how it blinks in, it transitions in. If I go to Cave 1, it slides in like that. That's a different way. We've added different stylings or enabled different stylings here than we have in the example we just did. Okay, so again, I would look at both ways. And if you're really great with CSS, you can add in your own style sheets and so on. One thing that I also recommend, like I said, is make it an interesting background. Like if I was going to make a dragon or some kind of I've kind of been abandoned in an island, right? Maybe you want to look and see something like, Zombie Island. Maybe there's something like that you can kind of borrow from the internet. So here's our Zombie Island, right? Maybe there's a game like this. If I think it was Zombie Island, get an idea. You may not steal the whole thing, but if I go to Zombie Island, maybe I want to kind of get an idea of what it looks like and include this as a front end part of your screens because you can include images and stuff like that as well in your slides, right? So, or maybe you want to do a background. So you want to say island background for your first slide, right? So you can choose an island background and include this island background in your slide to make it more interesting as opposed to a stupid gradient background, right? To me, that makes more sense than, and it makes it better from a story perspective. I'll give you higher points for a nicer looking, slide deck, right? If your slide deck looks like PowerPoint slides and doesn't look like a story, you're going to lose a few points because it looks like just what I've just given you, the basics, right? I don't want the basics back. I want you to play with this thing. I want you to make it your own. I want you to make it your own story. Okay? Anyone have a problem with that? Or maybe you're not a storyteller and you say, Tom, I want to use someone else's story. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. If you want to use somebody else's story and make it unique, as long as it's not the same as somebody else in the room, right? I'm good to go. I'm okay. You can use, if you want to make Lord of the Rings, right? And which object, where is Frodo going to go? Is he going to go get the Ring of Doom? Or is he going to go back home to the Shire? You can do that. I'm okay with that. That's your own little story. You've used Lord of the Rings as a backdrop. You don't have to be a storyteller here or a novelist, right? But make it interesting for yourself. If it's not fun for you, Guys and girls, it's definitely not going to be fun for me to read. I'm going to look at it, I'm going to go, holy crap, I'm bored, right? I don't want it to be boring. I want it to be interesting, so make it interesting for me, please. Okay. One thing I also want to handle in this part here is we talked about hosting, right? So I'm going to kind of continue with this lesson part. This is part 3, but I'm going to include hosting. Usually I try and separate each video with a different theme, right? But I kind of went a little bit long with the last one. I had to take a break, so I kind of finished off the slide stuff for this one. But I want to talk about hosting, and I want to talk hosting options, right? Because I want you to do every assignment you do, including this one, I want it hosted live. Okay. So here's one, GitHub Pages. GitHub Pages allows you to host things live. If you go to pages.github.com, we already have GitHub, right? It says websites for you and your projects, right? Hey, nice, right? How do I do it? Well, here's the steps. Right on GitHub, guys. Create a repository. Head over to GitHub and create a new repository named whatever your username is, github.io. Let's do it now. Come on. Join me on github.io, right? Come on. You got one? You got one on GitHub? I want you to do this GitHub stuff now. Forget what you got. Go in there and do your GitHub page. Come on. A repository that's named your user, whatever the username is on GitHub. So my repository would be named siliopoulos.github.io, right? I want you to make a repository with that name, right? Whatever your username is on GitHub.github.io. Are you guys good? Creating a repository takes 2 seconds, guys. Are we good? Next step. What was that? Where you create this? On GitHub, like this, right? So you go to GitHub, right? And if I was going to do something like myname.github.io, right? I go into my repository, go new repository, and just do that. Let's say I'm going to call my repository Ali, because my name was Ali the Best. Let's say my username was Ali the Best. Ali the Best, right? .github.io, right? That would be what my repository would be called. If I click Create Repository, it'll create that for me. Here's Ali the Best, .github.io, right? Now, your name is not Ali the Best. Your GitHub name is going to be something else, right? Okay, so now let's go back to this instructions. So there's a couple of options. What Git client are you using? A terminal, GitHub for Windows, GitHub for Mac? I don't know, right? Let's click. If you're using a terminal, then it's going to give you examples of how to do stuff with terminal. If you're using GitHub for Windows, it's going to examples of how to set it up if your repository for Windows. So let's set up this repository. I'm going to click Set Up in Desktop, right, after I clone my repository, right? So it says, click the green Setup in Desktop button. When the GitHub desktop app opens, save the project, right? Okay, let's try this out. So I'm going to go here, right? And I've got my option, right? And if you notice, there's nothing to clone yet because I've got nothing in here right now. So if I go to Settings, I can't pull it from here. I can't do anything from here. But I could open my GitHub for Windows, my GitHub for Windows app, if you're using GitHub for Windows. So I'm just going to pull that up here if I can. Sometimes it works for me, but because I'm using a virtual machine, sometimes it does. Right? All right. You should see something similar to this, yeah? Click this plus in your app. If you've downloaded your app, you can do this. Click Clone. It's going to look on my GitHub for all my stuff. Okay. Oh, there's Ali the Best, github.io, right? Because Ali is the best, right? He told me a bunch of times in the beginning of class. And then I click this little check mark, right? And then what it's going to do is it's going to take it, ask me where to put my my new repository. I'm just going to put it in the same place I always do, which is under my GitHub. I made a GitHub folder on my inside of my my VM here, right? Which is on my computer. Okay, cool. It's going to drag and drop this thing in here, and now I've got alithebest.github.io, and I've got no local changes. If I want to right-click on this, I can open this in Explorer, and I can actually show me this is my local file, my local folder that has this stuff. So this is step 2. Let's go back. So I've done this. Okay, it says create an index file. If I go back to github.windows, create an index file, grab your favorite text editor, and add an index.html file to your project, right? Okay. Well, that's easily done actually in Visual Studio, but if you're, if you can't remember how to do this properly, this document.html type or whatever, you want to create something like this is my sample GitHub page or whatever it's going to be. All right. So follow the instructions here, guys. It's not that easy. It's not that difficult to do anything. All right. So the easiest way to do that, of course, for me is I've got this example. I'm going to go new. I'm going to go new file, right? And this is just in Windows, right? I'm going to make it a text document, and see, I can see my my extension. My extension is txt. You may not be able to see your extension because your folders may be hiding extensions, and we'll talk about how to show extensions if you don't know how to do that. So this is one way to do it, index.html, and then it's going to ask me, do you want to change your extension to HTML? I say yes. That's one way to do it. Or if you don't want to do this here, right? I'm going to open this up in brackets because brackets is one of my favorite editors that I use outside of Visual Studio, right? And if hopefully brackets will work without needing a refresh. Sometimes it does. Okay, so if you notice here I am, my index.html in brackets. This is just an editor. And if I type in HTML5, sometimes, oh, this is bad. If I type HTML, right, I can actually get all the code hinting how I can create my document. But let's say, for example, I want to use Bootstrap. I can do that too. I can drag and drop a native document here in brackets. I know I need a doc type. When I created basically an HTML file, I need a doc type, an HTML tag, a body tag, and some other stuff, right? My doc type has got to be, so I'll say doc type. If I can type, doc type is HTML, right? Then I'm going to have an HTML tag, right? Then inside my HTML tag, I'm going to have a head tag, right? And then inside my head tag, I'm going to have a title tag. I know these things. These are basic things, right? And then inside my my HTML tag, underneath my head tag, I have a body tag. Okay, this is the long way to do it. Okay, long way. I can also do this in Visual Studio, by the way. I'm just choosing a random editor, right? Okay, and then my head tag, I can put a meta tag. I can do whatever, not a meat tag, a meta tag with a character set of UTF-8, just like we did last time. I'm just using a random editor here. You can use whatever editor of your choice. You can use a text editor, right? And this is Ali the Best. That's what my title is going to be, right? Something like that, right? And maybe some kind of, like it says here, hey, I'm hosted with GitHub pages. Hello world, right? I can do that. So let's do that. Say h1 tag. Hello world. And I'm hosted with GitHub pages, right? Save. Okay, now that I've got this saved, if you notice, inside my app for GitHub, right? You should see this. These are the changes I made, right? I've got an uncommit. I got a commit that I have to make now, right? I have uncommitted changes that I have to make here, right? So if I show my uncommitted changes, I'm going to say something like this: added index.html, right? Now this is something I need to commit, okay? It's my commit I'm making locally here, right? If I click on publish, I'm going to push this up to the server, right? So click publish. Then it's going to try and connect. If you set up your app correctly, it's going to try and connect, and it'll publish this up to your GitHub repository, right? Which would be here. There's my GitHub repository, my index.html, right? Let's keep following the example. Commit and sync. I did that already with publish, right? And you're done. And now your GitHub page is http:// whatever the username is .github.io. And this is how you would serve up your pages. So if you have several projects you want to put in here, you can put one project after the other, create your own page, and you can host it here for free on GitHub. And it's much better, faster than the school server. Now it's going to take some time sometimes to set this up. Sometimes it'll take, 5-10 minutes before GitHub recognizes your new page. But this is the way you would do it, and this is what I recommend for our projects here going forward. How about alternatives? What if you're an Azure user, right? Azure. Who's ever used Windows Azure or Microsoft Azure? Probably none of you have. That's good, right? Because cloud computing is the new thing, right? Well, you can certainly sign up free for Azure. It's a pay-as-you-go service if you really want to do this, right? And by the way, you can also point your custom domain. Let's say, for example, I have a custom domain, Ciliopolis.com. Hey, I do, right? And I use it just for this course. So I say Ciliopolis.com, right? It points to this silly little page I made for you guys, right? And this silly little page, right, actually lives on GitHub, right? So if I go to myself here, and if I look at my repositories, let's take a look as an example. So I go to ciliopolis.github.io. I already did this, right? Here's my GitHub page, and this is what it looks like, right? So this is the GitHub page, the back end of this responsive page that I made with a framework called jQuery Mobile. So if I click on COMP397, it flips over and looks like a little app. Right, here's my contact page, whatever my contact info is going to be here. Here's my home page. I got my custom icons that I used for gaming and so on. And there's Ciliopolis World, where your code lives. Huh? I made this. This is my. Maybe I'll make this as my logo for my external document. Eh? Boring as it is, right? So this is the idea. I want you guys to have this as an optional hosting area. So when you give me your link, I remember all your assignments have to be live. If you don't host your assignment live, you're going to lose marks. Any questions around this? GitHub pages. Okay. Let's say I want to use Microsoft Azure because I'm an Azure dude, right? Let's do it over here. You could sign up free to Azure from a deployment perspective. It's pay-as-you-go for a month, for 30 days, right? You can actually access Microsoft Azure. We'll do this is a cloud computing platform. So if I go Microsoft Azure, right? If I go to azure.microsoft.com, and it's a cloud computing platform, you can definitely sign up. It gives you $220 US free for the first month. You can try it out. You can always cancel your subscription. You don't have to subscribe after a month. If you're going to use Azure, and you might as well do it for the final project because you only have 30 days, right? So as we go towards August, sign up for Azure if you're going to deploy there, right? And then you can get $220 of hosting options for free. And all you have to put in is your credit card. They won't debit anything unless you actually use it beyond the month, right? If I want to go in to show you what Azure looks like, I'm going to go to manage.windowsazure.com. When you go in there as a really brief thing, you go into your own dashboard, if you will, right? And it doesn't take much to really deploy on Azure. I can do things like custom VMs, right? I can also create web apps, which are like websites. Here's my websites, right? I can make a new web app really, really quickly by deploying it here, right? And we'll talk about deployment options as we get going in the course. If you notice, I still have some credit on my thing because this is just for us. I've got some credit that I'm going to be using throughout the course, right? So I can deploy this as an option from to deploy to Microsoft Azure. Another option which is free, which I also recommend that you do, right, is Heroku.com, right? Heroku is another option for deployment, and it's free. You can use a free version of Heroku to kind of sign in and deploy your app. Let me show you what that looks like. We'll log in here. See if it remembers who I am. May not. Right. And if you notice, I've got a couple of options that I kind of put a few sites that I've deployed on Heroku. And by the way, there's all kinds of documentation on how to do that. But we'll go into the deployment stuff later on in the course, how to deploy. Two different options here. Remember, I was showing you this Starbase 12 app that I kind of made for this course about a year and a half ago, right? I deployed it on Heroku. So yeah, Starbase 12, right? Heroku.com, right? And if you notice, when I went to the Heroku side, it showed these Z's like it's sleeping, right? If I'm not using my site, it's not going to use any bandwidth or whatever. And Heroku allows me to deploy my site for free, right? And if, by the way, I made this purely with Create.js. I did this. It took me about 2 weeks. You know, anywhere between 40 and 50 hours of work to get this done. 2 weeks, right? And when I start, it gives me all the regular things that we normally do, right? Like last time, right? So this is a game I made that you guys are going to make for your final. You're going to make your own final project, right? My voice is here, right? I've got a little bit of firing, right? I've got some particle effects that I showed you last time. A little bit of music to make it crazy, right? The idea is to defend the Starbase, right? Right? There you go.
Entering sector.
That's my voice modulated, right? If I go back out, yeah, I know. If I go back out, still like that. It's nice and easy until I get to sector 0.5, and then I get like 2 guys. I can also fire. These are my photons. Right? I can use fire photons as well. There's 2 guys now, right? There we go. I'm gonna let myself die. No! Right? Full game. So you've got, like I showed you guys before, there are 3 states or 4 states that I got going on. One thing we're going to learn in this course is how to create a finite state machine, right? So we're going to do a, like I said, a start state, you know, your menu state, your instruction state, your game state for level 1, 2, 3 for your final project, and then your game over state, and then a way to get back to your start state again, right? Each of these states are like screens, right? By the way, I'm using Particle JS for this. That's what I'm using here. I'm getting a pretty good frame rate because my computer can take it, about 57 frames per second to 60 frames per second. If you try to starbase12.herokuapp.com, right, your frame rate might be slower because your machine might not be as good as mine, right? Which is an issue with the way I've coded it. And again, these are learnings as you go on. Nothing like a commercial app that I made, but at least it'll give you a chance to try it out yourself. So deployment options is what I'm really talking about here. And if I refresh, just to show you what's happened, right? Heroku sees Starbase 12 as an active app now, because before there was sleeping like these ones. I got a couple other ones, right, that I was using. Starbase 12, okay? So there are definitely some deployment options for you. You don't have to deploy at school. I highly recommend you learn something else. GitHub Pages is definitely better to me than deploying at school, only because it requires a little bit more thinking. How do I deploy to Heroku or to GitHub, right? In order for you to deploy it to GitHub, though, you can't deploy your Visual Studio site the way it is. You have to extract just the HTML pieces, not the actual solution, right? And put it inside that your GitHub.io repository. Right? The reason why is because your index.html page has to be the first page that your GitHub pages see. If you see the solution first, like if you just drag and drop a Visual Studio solution, it won't work. You need an index.html page. And also, it accepts things like other external JavaScript files. Like if you're going to make a library that's responsive, like for example, I used jQuery Mobile. You could use Bootstrap, which is a mobile-first kind of responsive framework, or you can use Foundation or something else to create your page. For people who aren't going to be gamers in the future, right? Let's say you took this as an optional course, and most of you did, right? How does this help you? Well, I think it's a great place, github.io pages, it's a great place to put your portfolio website. If you don't have a portfolio website, you should as a software developer, right? And on your GitHub page is a great place because GitHub, you can show off your work, number one. And the second thing is it's freely hosted, so you don't have to pay anything per month. If you're a poor student or a poor developer, right? It's okay. It doesn't cost any money. right? They give you one page for free, and they'll give you one for every organization that you create, right? So that's not so bad from a GitHub page perspective, right? So you create your portfolio website, you make it responsive, you make it so that it's mobile first, and you're good to go. Any questions around this stuff? All right, so just as a recap, what have we covered today? We've covered I'm just going to go back here. We've covered assignment 1, which is the dragon. Okay, again, it's due next Friday at midnight, right? We covered the Impress JS framework, how to use Impress JS that looks like, you know, you're almost like doing a Prezi presentation with JavaScript, which is kind of a neat little framework, right? We've covered deployment options, primarily GitHub pages, and how to use that for your assignment number 1. We've covered external documentation and how I want you to create your own logo, right? Hey, how about people who want to create their own logo? There's tons of free stuff out there that I covered already. How do we get to that if you don't have a graphic editor? Well, I kind of talked about GIMP as a free graphic editor that you can kind of download for your machine, right? So you can make your logo, right, with GIMP. And eventually when it takes me there, it'll show me GIMP. I kind of showed you this before, but I'm just reminding you, this is something you can go and grab and download one day when my internet works here on the platform. So I'll let GIMP.org go. The other thing to do, and I'm a big proponent of software, open source software, right? I like using something like Blender, right? If you want to learn 3D software, this is a great place to learn it, right? And I talked about this before, right? Where you can create almost a 3D representation of your logo, right? So I'm just going to kind of go in here. I'll show you what I'm talking about, where you can kind of create text for yourself, right? I'm going to go into editor, and I'm just going to edit. I'm going to say here TT as my text, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it, rotate it across the x-axis 90 degrees, so it's standing up, right? So now I have a 3D representation of my text. And the great thing with Blender is that you can, once you're into to this kind of stuff, you can create a 3D logo and style it the way you like. Blender, from blender.org, is free software that you can learn how to use. There's a ton of tutorials out there that I could not possibly cover in 14 weeks, even if I wanted to, of how to use and how to create 3D objects in Blender. In fact, I covered this in another course of mine, COMP397, Intro to Game and Simulation, which I have, I'm creating. If you actually go to the playlist, you can see on how to create basic styling and all that kind of stuff in that course, COMP391. Right, so Blender definitely is another place to make interesting logos, and you can actually capture this as an image as opposed to a 3D object, like a ping image, and include this inside your documentation, inside your game. Right? If you're like me, though, you like other software that's not free, not just GIMP, but other software. I'm just going to go there for a second. And like I said before, my preference is using Fireworks. You can't get it for free, but I believe, and I don't think there's a free version for students anymore. But Adobe Fireworks for me is like a kind of a lower end Photoshop, right? That only includes stuff that I need to create my logo, right? So let's say, for example, File New, and let's say I can create a canvas of 1,000 by 1,000 for now, and in here I can create. I'm just using my initials here as an example, so I'm going to say TT, right? It's my initials. But these initials are actually an object now, and I can make this row, right? Here's my TT initials as an example, and color it any way I like, right? So that it doesn't look as boring as just the initials, right? TT, I don't know. Maybe it's a pie. It looks almost like a pie shape. I could probably make it like a pie, right, for my initials. Maybe I want to add a circle around it. God, I'm getting creative now, right? There we go. TT with a circle around. Oh, that doesn't look good. Hold on a second. Let's take away the background color and add in a stroke of maybe a, I don't know, weird stroke like green. And make it so that the stroke is 5. I'm playing around, guys, right? Just because I want color on my logo, right? You know, and whatever. We can continue going here, but the idea is you can do it definitely here with Fireworks. And then you can export. You can file, save as. You can save this as a PNG file, and then there's your logo. It doesn't have to be complex. It just has to represent you, is what I'm saying, right? Okay, that's Fireworks. And the other thing that is really popular these days for making logos, and it's actually made for making logos, is Illustrator, right? Which is definitely something. If you're much better with making logos, Illustrator is the way to go. And of course, Illustrator CC. I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to show you guys how to use it, but only because it's out of scope for this course, right? So let's say, for example, I'm going to make a logo in Illustrator, and here's the width and height of my document, and press OK. It creates almost like a canvas, and again, I can do the same thing with Illustrator by putting my initials in here, right? And then it's turned into an object, and then from there, I can do stuff in Illustrator the same way, whether you like using Illustrator, or whether you like using Fireworks, or whether you like using Photoshop, or whether you like using Inkscape, which is free as well. You guys are all falling asleep. See, you're falling asleep. You can do whatever you need to do to make your logo, right? So that's one thing we have to cover as well. How do you make your logo for your external document? I'm going to stop it there because you guys are droning out, and also the fact that we're kind of coming to the end of our session today. Any questions around the stuff we've covered? So again, just to recap. Assignment 1, Impress.js, external document, logo, GitHub pages for deployment. These are all the different things we covered today, as well as a little bit of TypeScript with Visual Studio and how to set up stuff with Visual Studio, some CSS styling and all that stuff as well. Did I cover everything? Right. Any questions around this? If you do, again, you can always watch the videos again because it'll cover all the questions and stuff that we've covered. And again, you could kind of fast forward by the boring parts. All right? And that's it for me. I'll see you guys next week. And hopefully next week, one more thing, one parting thought before I say goodbye for today. Next week when we get together on the Tuesday AM, right, I want you guys to have ready whatever you got. I want to see your stuff. So I'm going to check you guys to see where you're at with assignment 1. You should be mostly done, right, by next Tuesday. If I see that you're not started by next Tuesday, we're going to have words, right? There's going to be problems, guys. This is bad, right? So please have everything ready for next Tuesday. It doesn't have to be your final version, but I want to take a look at it because it's due on Friday. Thank you.